Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Father.
One of my favorite moments of many days is when I'm getting ready to go home from the church at the end of the day. Yesterday, for example, after Vespers. The church was empty except for me. Well, except for me and all the angels, you know. But I was getting ready for liturgy, getting things prepared for the next day. And then as I was leaving the church, I was turning the lights off, going around turning all the lights off throughout the church. And I stopped for a second and I was looking into the church when all the rest of the lights were off. And there was only one light that was still on. And in fact, if you go into an Orthodox church anywhere in the world, no matter what time of day it is, if it's the middle of the night, even if all the other lights are off, even if all the other candles are put out, there'll be one candle or one oil lamp that you'll see still going. And that is the candle that sits on the holy altar. The candle that sits on the holy altar has a very interesting name. It's called in Greek Akimiton Phos. Akimiton Phos means the unsleeping light. It's called the unsleeping light because we never put that candle out. The other candles we have lit only when services are going on, but that particular light is kept burning round the clock, 24/7. Even on Great and Holy Pasta in the night, when we're all here in the church, and we turn all the other lights out, snuff all the other candles out, that one light is left going, and that one light is the light from which the priest distributes the holy fire, the holy light, to all the people, singing, Verte, lavete fos, come receive light from the never-fading light, and glorify Christ, who is risen from the dead. This tradition of keeping the unsleeping light burning 24/7 on the altar has its origins in the temple worship of the ancient Jews. If you read in the book of Exodus, you'll see that God's people are wandering in the desert, and God gives Moses the instructions for building there in the desert the tabernacle, the tent of meeting. The tabernacle had at its center a place called the Holy of Holies. And in the Holy of Holies there was the Ark of the Covenant. That was the place where God would come to be with his people. That was the place where God would come to visit with his people, to communicate with his people. We have to understand here that since the fall of Adam and Eve, mankind had experienced separation from God. Mankind had experienced the absence of God. What was paradise? What was the experience of paradise for Adam and Eve? It wasn't just that they lived in a beautiful setting and got to eat all kinds of nice fruits and things like that. Paradise was the presence of God. That's what Adam and Eve experienced in paradise. The presence of God. God walked with them in paradise. The fall of Adam and Eve, and the falling away from paradise, is a falling away from togetherness with God. That's why Adam and Eve, what's the first thing they do when they've sinned? The first thing they do when they fall. They hide themselves from God. They can't stand to be in his presence anymore. And so now, since the fall, humankind experiences separation from God and separation from one another. The other thing you see as soon as they sin is their each throats. That woman who you gave me, she's the one that made me do it. Separation from God and separation from one another. But God, who loves mankind, didn't want that to happen, didn't want to be separate from his creation, didn't want to be apart from his creation. And so, as the Jews are wandering in the desert, he establishes the tabernacle, the temple, the Holy of Holies. And in that temple, in that Holy of Holies, God comes and visits with his people. Outside of the Holy of Holies, in the tent of meeting, in the tabernacle, God commanded Moses to build a lampstand of pure gold. The lampstand of pure gold sat in the skini, in the tabernacle, in the tent. And the people would bring pure olive oil every day to Moses and to Aaron so that they could keep that lamp, the menorah, burning around the clock without ceasing, without stopping. God himself was present in the Holy of Holies. And so his presence there was honored by the unsleeping light that was kept burning for him. Today we're celebrating the feast of the entrance of the Theotokos into the temple. One of the hymns that we sing today for this feast refers to Mary as the heavenly tabernacle, skini uranios, the heavenly tabernacle. Long ago, God visited his people in the Holy of Holies. But when he visited his people in the Holy of Holies, he was doing so in a way that was limited, in a way that was incomplete, in a way that was imperfect. The priest would only go in once a year. The rest of the people didn't get to enjoy God's presence. The priests would go into the tabernacle, into the Holy of Holies, one time a year. That was it. And so, although God was visiting with his people in the Holy of Holies, separation was still there. God visited us, but God was not with us. We were still outside of paradise, the paradise of God's presence. Now, through the person of the Virgin Mary, God comes once again to be with his people. The Son, Jesus Christ, who was born of the Virgin Mary, is the very presence of God within creation. That's why she's called Theotokos. What does the word Theotokos mean? She who carried God. She who carried God. Because God himself dwelt within her. God himself. It's fitting then, when we read the story of the Virgin Mary being brought to the temple and presented for service to God in the temple, that her presence there was honored through candles, through lamps that were carried. In one of the hymns that we have for today's speech, we read, or we sing, "The young maidens rejoicing now, with processional lamps in hand, go before the Virgin, the spiritual lamp." Because we know that when Joachim and Anna brought their daughter, Mary, to present her to the temple, they had young women going before her carrying lamps, leading her into the temple. Why do they carry these lamps? They carry these lamps in order to honor the true light, Jesus Christ, who is to be born of her. The hymn continues, Jesus Christ, who will shine forth from her womb and will enlighten in the Spirit all the people sitting in the darkness of ignorance. So God was present in the Holy of Holies, in the skini, in the tabernacle, and his presence there was honored with a light. And God is present in the womb of the Virgin Mary, and his presence there is honored with a light. Now the akimiton phos, the unsleeping light that sits at every Orthodox altar throughout the world, stands in front of the tabernacle, stands in front of that golden structure that you can see on the altar that holds the body and blood of Christ. Through Holy Communion, God is present among his people. And we honor his presence with an unsleeping light kept burning before him. What that means is that whenever you walk into an Orthodox church, whether there's a service going on, whether there's not a service going on, whether there's a parish council meeting going on, whether there's a chant practice going on, whatever it might be, when you walk into an Orthodox church, you are standing in the presence of God. You are standing in the presence of God himself, the God who created the universe. But now we have to ask, what do we do with Holy Communion? We don't just leave it sitting there. What do we do with Holy Even the communion that's left in the tabernacle is used to bring communion to the sick, to bring communion to those who are in hospitals, those who can't come to the church. What do we do with Holy Communion? We consume it, we eat it, we take it into our own bodies. Holy Communion, the body and blood of Christ, is once again the presence of God in creation, and we are taking that into our own bodies. We're taking that into our own selves. What do we read in the Gospel of John, the beginning of the Gospel of John? John writes, Theotokos, God became flesh and dwelt among us, but more literally it says, God became flesh and he tabernacled within us. He tabernacled within us. He dwells within us in exactly the same way that he dwelt in the Holy of Holies in the temple. That Holy of Holies that only the priests were going to once a year. The presence of God is within us through Holy Communion in exactly the same way. Theos sarx ageneto ke skinosen en me. Just as the Virgin Mary held God within her, held God in her womb, we also hold God within us. And we become Theotokos. We become also people who carry God through Holy Communion. Just as the Virgin Mary became the heavenly tabernacle by receiving into herself the presence of God, we also become the tabernacle that receives his body and his blood. Just as the Virgin Mary became Holy of Holies by revealing to the world Emmanuel, God with us, and through God's presence among his people, paradise was restored, so too we become Holy of Holies, a people in whom God is made known to the world. Let us then honor his presence within us through an unsleeping light kept burning before him. Let us keep the lamp of the virtues burning bright, so that we can cry out together with all of God's people, rejoice, you are the fulfillment of the Creator's dispensation. Amen.